been a hot minute since I've done one of these, so, you know, let's get right to it. This is kind of the beginning of the end of these redo Disney discussion videos, and it happens to cover my personal favorite era of Disney animation, the Disney Renaissance. The Disney Renaissance is important to me personally because these are the movies that I grew up watching. And it's because of these movies that I have such an intense love and appreciation for Disney. These are also just really important for Disney because they were in such a low point in the 70s and especially in the 80s, and they really just bolstered the company and it allowed them to get things like Pixar. Because of the success of both Disney and Pixar, we got things like DreamWorks, and there was just this big huge influx of animation again, and because of that we have things like Kingdom Hearts and Once Upon a Time and all these other things that would not have existed really if it weren't for the Disney Renaissance. So they're very influential and very important, and I don't think people now realize this because they just take them for granted. To me, these 5 films that I'm going to talk about today are on the weaker side of the Disney Renaissance. I believe that the latter half of the 10 in general are much more weaker than the beginning half. So I hope you enjoy this video. This is Disney Animation, the Disney Renaissance Part 1. Thank you for watching.
Disney animation was a pretty big deal in the 50s and 60s. Then, due to multiple factors from Walt Disney's death to better-than-ever rivals to a general burnout in animation, Disney animation all but fell to the wayside in the 70s and 80s. Even the Disney studio itself was putting less and less faith in their animation department as they began producing more live-action material. By the mid-80s, the animation department was in dire straits. The Black Cauldron bombed big time, and it looked as though the department may actually be in danger of shutting down. They were even exiled off the main Disney lot in Burbank. They needed a hit, a big hit, and luckily they got one. In 1989, The Little Mermaid was released, and from then on, Disney never looked back. This period of the 90s is called the Disney Renaissance for good reason. They consistently released hit after hit after hit, and not only succeeded at the box office, but resounded with audiences and critics alike. This is the era that people my age know Disney by, and it's the era that cemented Disney not only as an animation or film powerhouse, but as an empire. Join me as I talk about my personal favorite era of Disney animation, spanning 10 films and 10 years. This is the Disney Renaissance. Number 10, Pocahontas. Let me start off by saying that none of the movies released during the Disney Renaissance are bad. However, some are obviously stronger than others. There are tons of things I like about Pocahontas. For one, the animation is gorgeous. The color palette is pleasing to the eyes. It's just a nice, pretty film to look at. In that regard, it's one of the strongest films of the era. Don't even get me started on the music. Alan Menken, who had been working for Disney since The Little Mermaid, along with songwriter Stephen Schwartz, once again brought some beautiful gems to the table. Mr. Menken has yet to disappoint me. However, of the 10 films released during this era, this one is by far my least favorite. The problem with this movie is that very few of the characters are actually engaging. I liked Pocahontas okay, but there was nothing about her that really stuck out to me. Radcliffe is an alright villain, I suppose. He does have a catchy song at least. Thomas, who is actually my favorite character in the film, is just a minor supporting character. The worst character, though, is John Smith. There's just something about him I don't like. He has the personality depth of a thin piece of paper. His character design is just so uninspired, and I thought Mel Gibson kind of phoned it in. I did not care about him in the least, and making you not care about one of the leads you're supposed to be caring about is one of the worst things a film can do. But I digress. The film has some really great elements, but just great elements can't make a film great. Next. Number 9, The Rescuers Down Under. From the biggest critical miss to the biggest box office miss. Of all the films released during this era, this is the only one that didn't really succeed financially. It gets lost in the shuffle smushed between The Beauty and the Beast and The Lion Kings of this era, and it's not really talked about much. It's kind of forgotten and severely underrated. I even debated whether or not to include this film at all, but it is part of the era, so I have to talk about it. All I have to say is, why didn't I see this film sooner? While it doesn't have the gravitas of some of the other films released during this era, this film has some really bright aspects to it. Firstly, it is absolutely gorgeously animated. It might have some of the best animation of the era. The animators really put some hard work into this sequel. Secondly, and more importantly, it fixes the problems of the original film while still keeping what made the original good. The original Rescuers was slow at times, but this film is fast and action-packed. It felt like it only lasted half an hour, not an hour and a half. But it also gives you the still charming characters of Bernard and Miss Bianca. You still enjoy them here. Even in a much different setting, they still work as characters. The new characters I found much more enjoyable compared to the original film. I cared and liked Cody much more than I did Penny. He's got more personality and is just more enjoyable. MacLeod is a much more effective and scary villain than Medusa, and Jake is a charming character who serves his purpose well. Though it's far from one of my favorites of the era, I suggest those who haven't seen it to check it out. You might be pleasantly surprised. Number 8, Hercules. I really like Hercules, but I can't say I love it. The music, though mismatched with the subject matter of the film, is great. The songs are some of the most fun to sing in the era. Thank you again, Alan Menken. The characters, for the most part, are likable. Hercules is a lovable hero who is earnest to a fault. His naivety adds to his charms. Meg plays against type for a Disney heroine. She's not the wide-eyed, sweet, innocent girl. She's wily, she's worldly, and she's spunky, and that's what makes me like her so much. Hades is one of the most fun Disney villains to date. Not only is he menacing, he is the god of the dead for goodness sake, but he's also very funny and wildly unpredictable. Only James Woods could bring out this side of him, and he does it spectacularly. I like Phil, but I think his joke with the word count thing kinda runs thin, and that's what brings me to the weaker aspect of this movie. It's very silly. I can take silliness. I wouldn't like Disney movies so much if I couldn't, but you have to know when to stop being silly and take yourself more seriously. I felt that this film was just a little too silly at points, and that the jokes sometimes fell flat. That's not to say that the film didn't have its serious moments. I just thought it could have been written just a bit more tightly. It's a good movie, and I enjoy watching it, but it's far from a favorite. Next. Number 7, Tarzan. Now we come to the last movie of the era. Tarzan, like Hercules, is a movie that I really enjoy watching, but I can't say I love. Let's start by covering the good parts about this movie. The animation is really well done. Tarzan dances through the vines with a smoothness and ease that could make any animator jealous. This movie is very action-heavy, and it has the animation chops to back it up. I like Tarzan and I like Jane even more, and I love them as a couple. I think they are beyond adorable and a good match for one another. I also have a personal fondness for Dr. Porter. I think he's as cute as a button. And of course, the movie would be nothing without Glenn Close's wonderfully warm portrayal as Kala. Turk and Tantar are funny, and they play off each other well, but I honestly could take them or leave them. So, with that out of the way, I want to talk about some things I disliked about the movie. Firstly, I found Clayton a rather weak villain. His motivation is kinda cliché, and I never really felt that he was all that threatening. But he did get one of the most gruesome deaths of any Disney villain, so there's that. Lastly, I want to talk about the music. Now, before you click away from the video with disgust and anger, let me say that I found the songs as a soundtrack really good. They're catchy and fun, and Phil Collins did a nice job with them. However, I think I would have preferred this movie be a musical rather than a series of musical montages set to Phil Collins' voice. There's not much of a connection between song and movie, and I really wish there was. I would have loved hearing Tarzan's own take about his new experiences, or how Kala felt as she held baby Tarzan for the first time, not how Phil Collins says they felt. I have a few gripes about the movie, but I certainly wouldn't say no if someone told me I was going to have to watch it again. In fact, I'd do so happily. Number 6, Mulan. There's a lot to appreciate about Mulan. Firstly, the animation style fits very well with the East Asia theme, with the beautiful watercolors and even the way the characters and backgrounds are designed. The characters, for the most part, are fun and enjoyable. Mulan is one of the strongest female leads Disney has offered us thus far, and she is not afraid to kick butt and take names. Yao, Ling, and Qian Po are lovable sidekicks that get pretty big laughs. Shang is a good foil to Mulan, and I really enjoyed watching his character progress and change right alongside our heroine. Mushu walks the very thin line between funny and annoying, sometimes dipping his toe in on both sides. He delivers some of the biggest laughs in the film, but I feel as though the movie was trying really hard to capture with Eddie Murphy what Robin Williams did with the genie. However, I do have some issues with the film. First of all, I felt as though Shan Yu was not the best villain. Yeah, he's pretty evil and does some really awful things, but I never felt connected to him like I do with other villains like Ursula or Captain Hook. It's probably because he has more of a connection to Shang rather than Mulan. My other problem is the songs, rather the lack thereof. Don't get me wrong, I love those songs. Make a Man and a You Gets Me Pumped. I just wish there was more. For a quote-unquote musical, it's very sparse, even by Disney standards. It only really has 4 songs. Despite the rather nitpicky problems, it's a really fun, inspiring movie that I will gladly watch again and again. Thanks for watching. Stay tuned for part 2.
rest of the songs in Sleeping Beauty, it is vastly inferior. Most of the songs in Sleeping Beauty are gorgeous, 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 and then there's this one. And second of all, what the fudge is a scump? Does anybody know? Let me know in the comments what a scump is.